La Lanterna, a spotlight in Italian football, is a podcast that dives into the beautiful game seen from the eyes of two fans from the oldest team in Italy's point of view. My name is Fabrizio Cardone, Canadian and Genovese, together with my friend Matt Killen, an American-born and Genoa fan. Every week, we'll tell you all you need to know about the only team you need to know about, Genoa CFC. Plus, we'll have guests and provide updates from around the magical world of Italian football. Welcome, benvenuti to episode 70 from Fabrizio and Matt.
That's right. Cheers, Fabry. We've made it to 70 episodes. I can't believe that. That's kind of crazy.
This is bubbling time. Bubbles, bubbles, bubbles.
Cheers.
Jokes on the side. We've had two matches. We were a little bit late, so hopefully we can put this on directly without so much editing and so on. But nevertheless, we had two Genoa matches, which was amazing. One after the other one, 2 wins. Incredible.
What we're looking for. Yeah, I mean, damn Serie A schedules where we have to deal with a Friday match that I think a lot of us on the North America had a harder time watching that one, and fairly early Coppa Italia schedule too, actually on Wednesday, which also maybe detracted a bit. But look, we got 2 results, 2 very different games, 2 teams with similar colors. That's about the only thing that was close in the way these games were played. I don't know, Fabry, where should we start?
Let's start with this was match day number 10 in Serie A. So we haven't really talked too much about Serie A so far, just because, it was still at the beginning, everybody almost around each other with respect to points and so on. But now, starting at match day 10, I think we can start more or less talking about what's happening. If you don't mind me starting with what the match day 10 looked like. So as you said, it started with us on Friday. Damn them on putting like the lower quality teams in their eyes on Fridays and Mondays. So we started on Friday. So that we were the opener for match day 10, and it was a 1-0, and we'll get to it right after this. Then on Saturday, we had Sassuolo Bologna, which ended 1-1. So we were kind of close looking at that because both of the teams, for one reason or another, obviously have some sort of interest because close to the table or because contenders or something to that degree. So it was a good result in a way. At least it kept them kind of close to us. Then we had Lecce Torino. Another interesting one with our friends from Lecce, talking about a few pods ago from our Lecce friends, but Torino with Juric. Just in the first half, Torino had managed to score that 1 goal, bringing the final result to 0-1, so an away win for Torino. Another match, Juventus Verona. I saw some glimpse of it. I apologize if I sound very biased, but I don't know. This team, I don't know. I just don't find that they are worth where they are right now. And a lot of people are maybe going to hate us or hate me specifically in saying this.
I think a lot of people agree, to be honest with you. I don't think many think they're really the second best team in Italy right now.
No, absolutely. And I mean, all kudos to our former Cambiaso that scored at the 96th. Very fortunate kind of goal in itself, but honestly, that should have been a 0-0. The one after, great match for any fan out there. Cagliari Frosinone started with a 3-0 up until the 70th minute for Frosinone at Cagliari. And then Cagliari managed to come back for an amazing 4-3 against Frosinone, which is good for us in the standings. A lot of people
That's definitely, we'll talk about it more, but
yeah, a lot of people were asking me, was that a good thing for Cagliari to win over Frosinone? Wasn't it better at times? So on. Personally, I think it was best for someone that was at the second last or last, if I'm not mistaken, and bring them a little bit maybe closer to us, but also keeping Frosinone down at the same time. But anyways, also a lot of people saying, oh, an amazing outcome of Serie A. Never seen anything like that. Calm down, people. Maybe too young for you to talk about Serie A. There was one from Genoa. And so this was a Cagliari Frosinone. Ranieri on the bench for Cagliari. There was one in 2011 for Genoa versus Roma. Ranieri on the bench for Roma, which because of that result, Ranieri was sacked, and Roma was winning 3-0. We had goals by Mexes, Totti, and Gordiso. And then the magic happened with doppietta both by Paloschi and the Trecino. I can't remember now. The Argentina died. Come on, tell me. Anyways, we'll get to it. I promise that I'll remember his name.
Palacio, we are fucking idiots.
You,
Rodrigo Palacio.
Rodrigo.
That's what you're thinking of.
Yes,
Of course, it's Palacio.
And another one obviously also happened with Lecce Milan. That was in the days as we talked about it just before we went recording with Dida and so on. And that was 3-0 for Lecce at home, and then Milan with a tripletta. 3 goals by Boateng, then managed and there was a fourth one, and then they won 4-3. So what I'm trying to say with this is, for whoever has short memory or who is too young to remember, there has been amazing comebacks like that. And
I do hope the youth also research and watch Palacio and his highlights for Serie A, because of course, I mean, we're biased as Grifo.
We're being very supportive.
This is a fantastic player. How many players do you ever see also on that form with the rat tail? It's impossible. It's just iconic.
Impossible. After Cagliari Frosinone, another interesting one that was with teams that are close to us. Monza Udinese ended 1-1. I still think that was a good result also as well. Then we had Inter Roma, which Inter is starting to detach to become a possible contender for the winning of the championship. So they won 1-0 against the poor crybaby. I meant Mourinho. Then, very important, Napoli-Milan. This, personally, tell me what you think, but this really reminded me of the match. Sorry, Milan fans, if you are even listening to us, but after that rob match against us, I'm really happy for what happened here. I mean, it's not a loss, but at the same time, it reminded me a lot of the match that we had against Napoli. So what I'm trying to say with this is Napoli was losing 2-0 against AC Milan. Olivier Giroud had 2 goals in the first half. Second half, then you have 2 goals by Politano and Raspadori. That was just the 2 goal scorers that had against us. So maybe we are as strong as AC Milan, and then
I like that.
Jokes on the side. Let's continue with the matches for match day 10. And we have Empoli-Atalanta, a very clean sheet, easy going for Atalanta, winning 3-0 against Empoli. And last but not least, Lazio against Fiorentina. That was another trouble one with, personally, again, I don't think that Lazio deserved to win this one, but it ended 1-0 on the 95th minute for a very controversial penalty kick by Immobile, and they won at the end, 1-0. So what does the standing actually look like today? So Inter sitting right now at 25 points. Second spot, Juventus at 23, to your point. Are they deservedly the second best? AC Milan sitting on the third spot with 22. Atalanta at 19 points, fourth spot. Napoli fifth with 18. Fiorentina sitting at the sixth spot, last spot for Europe at 17 points. Right below them is Lazio at 16. Bologna 15. Roma 14. Monza 13, together with Lecce. It's very tight. It's still early, but we're only on match day 10. So it's a good thing. Trying to say with that. If you think about the 10th spot to the third spot, it's only 6 points. Then Monza sitting at 13 together with Lecce. As I was saying, we have Frosinone, 12 points together with Torino. Then we have Genoa and Sassuolo sitting together, tying at the 14th spot. Then you have Verona there's a little bit of gap now starting. 16th spot with Verona at 8 points. Udinese and Empoli, 17th spot. So now we're looking at the relegation area. And Cagliari sitting at 6 after their win, we mentioned before. And last but not least, the Salernitana, 4 points, no wins. It's the only team left with no wins in Serie A.
The exciting thing, like as you mentioned, it is pretty close, almost throughout the table. But the exciting thing for us Genoano is because we're closer to the top half of the table than we are to relegation, albeit only by a little bit. But if things all go our way, we're literally a win away from being in 10th or 9th spot in a single match week, which is pretty incredible. I think it's obviously like way too close and too early to say too much more beyond that because so many other teams are in the same position that we're in. And also, as mentioned, the top half of the table, if you consider Monza's position in 10th / Lecce's position in 10th, we're only 2 points from that position. We're also only 4 points from being in 18th spot where Empoli are, assuming they are able to catch their own kind of momentum. So everything's still pretty close, but I think the good thing is we're at least in a place 14th, 15th. I think if you were asking a Genoa supporter where they would want to be around this time of the season, remember already the teams we've played. We played Milan. We've played Fiorentina, we've played Lazio, we've played Napoli, we've played Atalanta, we've played some really, really strong sides already this season. We've yet to play some of the other big teams, but we've played most of them. We've played Roma, we've had a lot of big matches already, and to go through 6 out of the 10 matches we played at the beginning of the fixture list being, top 8 opponents. The only ones really we're missing are Juve and Inter. Those are the only two that we've not played in the traditional kind of bigger group teams.
Currently top 1 and top 2, by the way.
Yeah, whatever, minor detail. But the point being is that we've gone through the gauntlet for the most part, and we've ended out in a place that I think many fans would and should be happy with. So now, like the thing that really, really is important is we've had good results. We've struggled at times to score, but it's great that we have Retegui. Well, actually, we need to talk about that. But it was good. At least we had him back. I think looking forward, we need to get results out of these upcoming matches to really, really feel like we're starting to get into a place where we can feel the right, not just comfort, because it's too early for the season to feel comfortable with how we're getting results either. But if we're able to get a couple more results, you need to have that momentum. You need to have that confidence. And obviously, getting those points only helps to add to where we need to be at the end of the season, which is that 40-point goal.
What I wanted to say is, like, especially for English speak overall, the atmosphere in Genova is the typical, as one of the first things that I taught you guys from a Genovese, so Genoese language or dialect, whatever you want to call that, is the Mugugno word, which is the complainer or the one that is always negative, things like that. And the atmosphere in Genova is always like, oh my God, this player, oh my God, this thing. Oh my God, Gilardino, he's a newcomer. He doesn't understand. Well, listen, we are doing, as you said, an amazing, a good Serie A showing. I haven't seen, obviously, we're not like in the top 8, top 6 for the European spots. First of all, we're reclute, as we say in Italian. We're newcomers from Serie B. Even though we just went down for 1 year, let's not forget that we have a new management, a new owner, new coach, manager itself, and so on. So there's a lot of aspects to keep in mind that we're learning a lot of things. We did a very decent and respectful Serie B season. We're looking at not with a coach that is used to Serie A, with players, some of them anyways, are not used to Serie A, from Vogliacco to Dragos and so on, right? But we obviously do have still some good players like Strootman, Badel, and so on, which are still like what our forte is. If we think about it, we're halfway the first leg. I think we're doing decently in spite of those people that are thinking badly about everything that is happening. And as you said before, most of the top 8, anyways, from last year, we've already surpassed them. And if I have to just list quickly, the next one coming through, like we have Cagliari, Verona, Frosinone, Empoli, Monza, then Juve, then Sassuolo, and then Inter, and then Bologna. Not as bad as our starting. Let's not forget our starting year when we were all saying, oh my God, what's going to happen? Look at all these matches that we're having. A very tough opener for 10 matches, and we're doing okay.
I think it's better than okay. I mean, I think it's great. We're in a really good position for where we need to be. And now we have a really, I think, almost critical run, which might seem counterintuitive to say, well, we're already feeling good about where we are and how the season has progressed thus far. But we really need to make sure we're getting 3 points now all of a sudden. this is becoming a different target, a different way of setting our expectation. The beginning of this season so far has been survival. Let's make sure we get something. And it's been fantastic in most cases that we have gotten something. And there are a couple of matches that we wish we would have gotten more, or we think we could have gotten more or should have gotten more. But in the end of the day, it was a number of really difficult fixtures. And you expect to maybe get points for 2 of those matches instead of 5 or whatever it was for us. So I think this is an interesting time as a Genoa fan, because we now need to get back into a mindset that we've not been in Serie A for a really long time. And, we were in this mindset last season with Serie B, where we need to expect a win. I think so much of the prior seasons in Serie A before we went down, it kind of felt like every single time we won, 3 precious points, we'd say in Italian all the time on the group chats. That's really what it came down to. But I can say, at least from my own perspective, even in times you're playing against bottom dwellers, we didn't have the look of a team that was a surefire win when they were going out and playing a team like that. And I wouldn't say that that's the case today. I think obviously what's clear is Serie B overall is pretty damn competitive. There's a lot of positional places. Even when you look at the top 6, there's not a massive gap in between those teams and what's going on there. And so, we can't look at this and feel so confident and feel like we've done our work because we have much of the season to go. But at the same time, there's reason for optimism, and now we'll put our hats on a little differently as we're looking at these next few matches, and hopefully we do get results out of them.
No, you're right. We had the right team, I suppose, the right mentality, the right coach. I really want to see Gilardino forever. I want these vedove, the widows of Gilardino, really to get off and get away with this, because I think we have a very new upcoming coach that is the next future of a next, saga or, realm of a few matches coming up. And as you said a little bit earlier, this is now the season where we have to start to focus a lot more. We went through Salernitana. Next one is going to be a direct contender, which is Cagliari. And then we have a whole bunch of other matches coming up, from Verona to Genoa, Empoli, just to mention a few. And not to mention the Coppa Italia that we're going to be talking about shortly. But before we get into the match against Salernitana, I want to talk quickly about Olindo, which I wanted to hear about his comments from the match.
Genoa Salernitana 1-0. We knew it was going to be a tight match, low scoring. I'm disappointed in Salernitana for the first half, but I think in the second half they created some chances. Since the beginning of the season, we've been giving up the first half to the other team. I think there's something needs to change for Salernitana. They need to wash away the fears that they have. Congrats to Genoa. It was a good game. I was happy when they took him out. Not because he was injured, but because he couldn't be a threat to our team. I wish him the best, and I hope Genoa, for you guys, I hope they stay safe in Serie A, and so do we.
Malinowski breaking the lines. This is Gudmundsson. Still with Gudmundsson. It's brilliant. He's only just come to life, but when he produces, he sparkles. A quiet first half an hour for Albert Gudmundsson, but then he just decided to turn it on. And how Marassi on its feet again to acclaim this brilliant young footballer.
Thank you for your comments, but I did also wanted to talk now about, briefly, we don't have to, I just like to do it just because it's calcio. I love calcio, you love calcio, everybody loves calcio. It doesn't mean that Serie A is the only calcio out there. Quickly talking about what's happening in the Serie B. I'm not going to go through a lot about it. I'm going to talk about the very hot topics and very important things. Parma seems to be flying off their hand path with respects to the finally, probably after what, is it 4 years, 3 years, that they're trying to come back up in Serie A. So they're doing very well in the first spot. I see them as strong contenders for Serie A direct promotion. The next one is Venezia and Catanzaro are sitting now at 21. So Venezia is not doing bad at all. also Catanzaro being a very new team from Serie C. It reminds us about our last year with Südtirol and Bari being the surprise teams, and that's what they're doing right now. But at the same time, Palermo sitting at the 4th spot with 20 points, and Modena and Como sitting right just behind them with 19 and 17. And Südtirol still sitting at 16. And Cremonese doing not too well. Unfortunately, Ballardini got sacked, and there's a new replacement there, but also Cosenza is still hanging in there in the higher ranks, at least in the top 10. But at the bottom, this is the most important thing. We've seen a lot of teams being a little bit of the ones that were giving points away left, right, and center. I'm very disappointed with our friends at Pisa, sitting at 15th spot at 12, even though they're sitting well compared to the fact that 16th spot is Spezia at 8 points. So there's 4 points between the 15th and the 16th. 17th spot is Lecco together with, guess who? Sampdoria. Points. And then we have Ternana able to win one match, I suppose. So they're sitting at 6 points. And then Ferro Pizzolò that they managed only to win one match as well. And they're sitting at 5 points. So what I'm trying to say is like the bottom 5 are looking pretty horrible. So,
I don't think you mentioned Lecco, who, by the way, are 2 games in hand on Sampdoria. So when you look at it that way, Samp could easily be in the relegation position and maybe in some way, especially you look at the next fixtures, Sampdoria play Palermo, which you would anticipate to be a difficult match for them, even though Palermo may be, 4th position, probably not exactly where they want to be, but it's pretty darn close with them being in 4th position overall and close to those automatic promotion spots. And Lecco just below them play Reggiana, who of course we just played. Not to say that will be an easy out for them. We certainly didn't have that experience in the Coppa Italia. But if you see maybe those opposite results coming in, all of a sudden you'll see Lecco with a game in hand, 3 points clear of Sampdoria with already 10 matches played for Lecco's side. So yeah, the hope is on. I guess you can say that much. That
we're all putting out owls, and I have to explain this to whoever's not Italian, where these owls in Italian like gufare, so it's a verb. So to owl essentially means to wish for the worst for the other team. So that's what we're doing right now with Sampdoria. We're hoping and we're wishing. We were rooting for Pirlo to remain with Sampdoria, and because he's doing very well, for at least what we care for.
Well done.
Anyways, going back to Serie A. So what do you want to talk about the matches of? How have you seen Genoa versus Reggiana?
I mean, I think the short summary from how we performed and how it turned out against Salernitana, job well done in the end. I think we were the more dangerous side in the beginning part of the first half. One of our calling cards for this season, and you mentioned Gila's plaudits, I think this goes into that category. We've been fantastic from set pieces. We had multiple times. We nearly scored from set pieces. We didn't get the goals, but we had great chances. And I think a lot of times what you expect is you expect to create great chances and great moments. You had, I think, Badel hit the post on one. We had another that was a narrow miss from Dragushin, or saved actually. But I think on the whole, you look at those things as successful and you play the numbers game with that. A lot of the times those chances turn to goals. So that's an encouraging thing by itself. I think it's one of the best things if you look at the statistics, and forgive me because I've not looked totally at our season to date with chances created and expected goals and all of that stuff. But I think one of the things going for us, even when we had a lower expected goal ratio than maybe we were converting, is we were doing an excellent job of being clinical from set pieces. And I don't think that's luck. I think it's really well organization from the team. The goal we have, and this is what's so fucking exciting, excuse my language, of being a Genoa fan right now, is that we do have individual class. And that's kind of what happened. That was what the goal was that gave us this victory, was Goodmanson doing Goodmanson stuff at home at Marassi. And, whether or not he was involved in the first part of the match or doing these other things, I think you see his kind of drag back, which I love. That it's always just wonderful to see when those types of moves actually result in a goal. And then just kind of in this really coolly positioned, well-slotted shot from a fair distance, I think it's worth saying too. And that ends up being the match. That pretty much kind of ties a bow on the whole thing. I think that the only downside to this, one of the worries that we have, unfortunately, for the next month or so. There is talk, and I remember on the pod when we were previewing, we were talking about who's going to be fit, who's coming back, what's going to happen. I was thinking that Retegui would not play in this match, and I think you had read otherwise. And at the end, he does play, but in the end, he does go off injured again. And we're now looking like somewhere around mid-December before we have him back. I think it's pretty unfortunate. I mean, it's not to say he wasn't involved in the match or anything, but it's the type of thing you worry about. I know Will on our group chat, with the We Are Genoa group chat, was similarly concerned when we were thinking about is he going to play or not? Why risk it if it's one match? Yes, Salernitana is a match you need to get 3 points out of if you're us and you're trying to be giving yourself as best chance as you can for survival. It's no disrespect at all on Salernitana. It's just there are only so many matches where we've got maybe more of a level pegging in terms of our squad depth and everything else, and you need to make the most of those opportunities. But at the same time, it's a worry that we're going to be without our star man for probably a month.
And that's a big concern, Matt. I have that since the beginning, and unfortunately, I'm not saying that this is a standard thing that is happening because I don't necessarily want to believe that. I just think it's just an unfortunate series of events that is happening, that both Macias and Retegui have fallen back with perhaps too eager to bring them back, while apparently the approach is a little bit on the conservative side, to say, let's wait before they bring them back and let's make. But apparently doesn't seem that what's happening. So the unfortunate side is the fact that they're both our strikers. And this, we'll get into it shortly, but essentially, not only we've seen it so far with the subs that are happening with the players that are coming in that are not at all at the same quality. And we'll talk about it shortly also with the Coppa Italia match against Reggiana, but the quality of the bench is what it is. And it's especially on the forward side, it's detrimental to the fact of showing it to the end of how the quality lacks. Their substitution for Retegui, we know who they are. They are Puskas and they are Ekuban. We can have so many comments and people talking badly about these two players, but ultimately, the truth is they're not at the level that we would need to have in Serie A today. And that showed also in the second half against Reggiana. Reggiana for sure in the first half. My apologies. We wanted to say against Salernitana in the second half, also when the benches came in and so on, also with perhaps maybe the attitude and also sitting back. And that's another thing that I'm sure that Gilardino is going to look at. But going back to our bench, it's extremely understandable that the quality back when we have substitutions are just going to be not even sufficient.
Yeah, I mean, it's just reality of being a newly promoted side. I think the Macias bet, unfortunately, doesn't seem like it's cashed at all yet because he's been hurt most of the season. The good news is that injury is a pretty minor one. I might be in the minority, but I'm holding out hope that Yagiolo, who we've not seen very much of and who also, unfortunately, is injured, maybe his addition in a couple of weeks might be something that's there. Ekuban, I think we've not had, it's just been a poor run of form from him. But at the same time, like, this is a player that absolutely we would have expected more from. And so I think if there's a player you would kind of focus more on in terms of our hopes or how things could come about, he's a guy that, this is a really big opportunity for him. I think if he doesn't show in the moments where we need him to kind of be front and center, I'm not sure what it looks like for him in the coming seasons and what happens with his future. But at the end of the day, look, we don't have an infinite budget. We don't have ability to add all these players. We added Retegui and Macias, who seem to be adequate additions in the attack, and unfortunately, both of them are hurt. And I think this is why I think you can be critical of having Retegui play in this match, because he goes down injured, and all of a sudden now, are we playing Galdames again? I don't know. I mean, let's talk a little bit about the Coppa Italia match. Unless you,
only one thing I wanted to remark, just because you brought him up, to talk about Ekuban. I really get upset when I hear people talking badly about Ekuban. Maybe because we have kept him to our hearts just to protect him or just to believe in him. You are right with respect to the fact that he hasn't delivered. So ultimately, on the paper, it's obviously that we're going to put him, like other players, mind you, at the same level with respect to not delivering what we are expecting from these players. The disrespect that certain people have, we understand that he's not Serie A quality and so on.
Well, hold on. Like, I don't understand this whole thing, though. Like, this is like, there's like, oh, okay, he's not Serie A quality. If he's not Serie A quality, we should boo the fuck out of him. Like, I think, like, I don't think we're at a place where we can say he's not Serie A quality. If he's not Serie A quality, why are we even fucking playing him in the match? Like, this is a guy that we had. He came in. He was one of our top guys in the season that we went down. Yes, he's been lacking that opportunity. He's been lacking those moments. I know what you mean and what you're trying to say. He's trying, he's endeavoring, and we're seeing this kind of shit posting. I think at the end of the day, you and I are like-minded in the fact that, like, here's the reality as Grifone. We are dependent, believe it or not, on Calabacchiban. At least for this next month, we need Calabacchiban to have good matches. We need another player besides Albert Gudmundsson to be capable of attacking prowess. And having a bunch of people mock this guy on social media and say shitty things about him, it doesn't seem like that's a great way of getting the most out of a player that we've got. So I'm totally with you on that fact. Like, I don't like seeing it either. It tugs at my heart too when you see across all the Genoa group pages. And if you're like me, I know you are, there's like all of them, like all of the individual fan club groups, they all do their own posts, they all do their own things. And the memes, unfortunately, oftentimes are directed at Ekuban, and it sucks. I don't think, this is why I'm reacting. I'm reacting too strongly to this because I know you and I are very much like-minded with Ekuban. I don't think we're at a place where we can fully say this guy is useless. He's not a Serie A player. I do think, as everyone has said, he's not performed really to the level of skill set. And one of the things that is frustrating as a fan when you watch him play, he kind of wears his heart on his sleeve in like a bad way, if you know what I mean. And it just happens too much. It's a kind of annoying as a fan to see this. When he has a chance and he misses it, he goes, and he does this whole thing and his body language sucks. And like he has a bad touch and he kind of does that thing and then he gets whistled at. And it's just kind of like that whole combination you don't like to see. You don't like to see fans going at their own players. You don't like to see players kind of exasperated and seemingly out of ideas. But at the same time, like, who else but Caleb Ekuban at this point? It's like, we've got Gudmundsson, we have Ekuban. Puskás tries real hard, but I think we need Ekuban to be more of a factor within these coming weeks because Macias, I think you're right, it's probably at least 2 match days before he's back to fitness. Maybe he comes on as a sub in the match day after this one. We talked about Puskás. I mentioned Yagello, who's not really in the same position anyway. We need Ekuban. At the end of the day, we need Caleb Ekuban. And as mentioned before, this is a really critical stretch of matches that we have. With or without Retegui, we need to get points from these matches. We need to be able to go up and play Juve and look at each other in the face and say, if we lose this match, we're not going to be super concerned about what that means for us at the end of the table after this one match. I think if we start dropping points to Cagliari and to others, then you get a lot more concerned. And so I'm with you. We need to be on his side.
Maybe this was against Salernitana and not Atalanta. And at the same time, what I heard was obviously people bantering bad things about Ekuban, where we're talking about a player that has tried to do all his best. And right. The player was almost in tears at the end of the match because people were saying, his attitude, at least before he was able to, the energy and the ball possession and so on, and now he's not. And against Salernitana, he just gave up. But the truth is, at the end of the match, the player was actually almost in tears because he was not able to give and deliver what he wanted to bring to the team, to the point of Gudmundsson even going to the player and saying, don't worry about it. Let's look at the next match and so on. So my point to this is I want to applaud Gudmundsson also to do this. And I want also and mostly maybe us fans that are following us are not necessarily at the same level of what I'm hearing anyways from the Italian side. I think we should all emphasize on the fact, to your point, Matt, is we should support him no matter what and hoping for the best. I suppose we should do that with Puskás as well. And these are the players that we have right now. And regardless of what we think about them, we should root for them and not saying, it's him and that's why he made that bad, ball or kicked it out.
Yeah, I mean, totally. I think at the end of the day, we need to back our players. I mean, there's not a perfect comparison, but there's kind of one with my beloved New York Knicks and a player on our team called Julius Randle, who, if anyone follows the NBA, Julius has been an NBA All-Star. He's had amazing parts of his career, so it's not quite as apt. But Ekuban, I will say, I thought he had better moments in his Genoa career earlier on than he has certainly in the last calendar year or so. But it's been this big thing where Randall's kind of a guy we count on for performances. And there have definitely been more than his share of really big performances that he's had. But there's also been a lot of memorable ones where he's not done that well. And there have been moments where it seems like he's not in it in the same way. And I think body language things come up. And there are periods of time, especially in New York, which thankfully I'm not sure it's gotten to this level with Ekuban. You hate to see the memes, but there were moments, as New Yorkers, we boo players when they don't do very well. We let them know. It's how we handle sports. It's how we respond to our view as being fans. We give you all the love in the world when you put your blood, sweat, and tears out for the team. When it seems like you're subpar, we tell you about it. And there were moments where that was happening and he was visibly reacting to the boos in the game, putting his thumb down, talking to fans, all sorts of things like this, directly responding to this in a negative way. And it's just awful. I mean, as a fan, it kind of makes you riled up and you hate that type of a thing because you're supporting this team. You're trying to get this guy to react and do what's going on. He's basically saying, I get it. I know that was a bad shot, F you type of a thing. But at some point, it's kind of like, we need this person to do something. I don't think we're quite at the same place with Ekuban. I don't think it's like the Marassi is turned to vitriol and everyone curses his name and anything like that. But it's something that you just don't like to see players going through. Because at the end of the day, this is a person. They're out there. I think Ekuban, especially under Blessing, was famous for just being a workhorse, putting it all out there. And yes, this is much more than just participation and trying hard. That's not what it is to be a player. And where I think some of the criticisms coming from this season is, do we have a player who really has the skill set that we need? That's a fair conversation to have. But at the same time, I think you have to kind of look at it and say, we need this player to be successful. Can we get some sort of momentum with how he's playing? And I think there's still a possibility that does happen. What it means for next season, I don't know. What it means when Retegi's back, don't know. But at the end of the day, he's out. And who knows? He could come back in December and hurt himself again. So we really need to find that balance. And I think we're very much like-minded in that approach.
Gilardino believes in him, and it's more or less whether it's because of his mentality to push and pump the player or not.
Well, I think also one thing that we need to make sure we don't lose complete sight over is so remember he had a decent start to Serie B before he went injured. And that was a major concern for us in Serie B. When he goes down, I don't know. And we kept talking about the latter half of the season. Is Ekuban going to return? What's he going to do? How's it going to work? He did eventually return. He had some decent kind of substitute moments at the latter half of the season last year, but nothing really substantive in terms of goals or anything. That's been his role for 6-8 months. Come on in 75 minutes, do something.
Personally, if I may say, I don't see him as a striker. I see him as a winger. But regardless, I still think we need him right now. And
yeah, and I think I agree with you. I don't think he's definitely not a proper number 9. And so that's another conversation you can make. Are we putting him in the right position? I also think as a professional, you need to get results from the time that you have. That's part of what it is to kind of demonstrate. Making another parallel. At Arsenal, you look at a guy like Trossard, who came in transfer window last year, was only being substituted on the 85th minute, and then became the star of the show, really, every time he got his moments. So you kind of need more of that from him, but he's also only been getting these kind of smaller chances. So maybe with a more starting position, we see more from him.
Anyways, so let's go to the Genoa-Reggiana match. So this was round of 32, if I'm not mistaken, for Coppa Italia. So this was Genoa against Reggiana at the Ferraris. Reggiana, very well-known friends with respects to the ultra side. Friends, so gemellaggio for at least 50, 60 years, if I'm not mistaken. I don't. And we haven't really faced them in a long time. It was very cute and nice. I shouldn't say cute, but it was nice for the fact that the fans greeted the players, the fans at the exit of the highway and said, okay, let's walk all the way to the Ferraris together, chant together, and so on. So it was a very nice, friendly type of atmosphere, similar in a way that how we see it with Cosenza. And so from the fan perspective was great. Now, starting with the match itself, so this was very important. It was quite clearly stated there was no press release by Gilardino, but it was quite clear that we wanted to pass and go through this round to go to the round of 16, which would have been against Lazio. And what happened? So the first half was essentially, would you say 90-80% of the bencher? And I think that the first half reflected essentially the biggest issue that we have, as you said, newly comers to Serie A. And that's what we have on the bench. And that's what essentially happened, ending the first half at 1-0 for Reggiana.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably fair to say the first half of the match was one-way traffic. And not for us, for Reggiana. I think they really looked like the better side. They probably should have had 2 goals. There was a selfish moment where it was a winger of one of their forwards. He had another forward right in the middle of the box, and he decided to go it alone himself, and he skied it. Didn't even get the shot on target. If he would have passed that ball, I think we probably would have surrendered 2 goals. I don't know. Like, I know a general theme that we've had and that we've talked about is squad depth and something that's there. But I think also, like, and I don't mean this in any respect to Reggiana, but, we brought in many players who we think are capable and good players. And I think saying it from a Genoa fan perspective, you would have expected more. There's no other way to say it. It's not, we're resting everyone and this is just what we're going to get. Like, I have to say, we did not look the part at all the first half. We made 2 substitutions before we even got to the beginning of the second half, which was to sub off Kutlu and Thorsby. And this is where I'm most disappointed, if I'm honest. We have 2 players who we brought in as transfer targets and ahead of the Serie A campaign. We've got 1 player who's played multiple seasons in Serie A for a team who we don't have any sort of love for. We've got another player who we signed from Turkey who was kind of an unknown quantity. Both of these guys, I don't know what we're doing. Like, at this point, we're going through 10 matches of the season. This is 11 or 12, I guess, if you count the other Coppa Italia match. They've not all played in all of those matches. They've each had moments where they've had better moments than others. These 2 are 2 guys you expect to be able to contribute in Serie A, and I get nervous when we have to put either of them in for extended periods of time.
One thing before I talk about the formation is I wanted to congratulate Leali for doing an amazing match once again.
Yeah, Leali saving our ass again.
Well, same thing. We saw him also in the previous match against Salernitana. So he's showing finally the true colors of who he is. Well, the formation itself, it looked like a 3-5-2 or 3-5-1-1 or 3-4-2-1. Depends on how you look at it. But essentially, you had Leali in the goal, and then you had from right to left Bani, Vogliacco, Maturo. Vogliacco, his first full match, well, not full match because we will talk about it soon, but after his injury and after the great year that he had in Serie B. So it was very interesting to see also how he played. Then in the midfield, we had De Winter, Strootman, Thorsby, Kutlu, and Haas. And then we had 1 or 2 or whatnot. That might look like it was Galdames and Puskás. So out of this starting 11, I only pass Leali and maybe Maturo and Bani, but that's about it. De Winter. In the first half, Girardino has put him on the right side, but also fluid type of going back and forth, also to the front. While in the second half, being more on the defensive side, he showed in the second half a lot more quality than we were expecting from him. Thorsby and Kutlu, so just at the beginning of the second half, when you replace Kutlu and Thorsby for Badel and Frandrup, the game changed drastically.
Yeah, man, this is why I think it's unfortunate, because obviously, like, we know Badel and Frandrup's quality. What is obvious is these guys are not going to get a minute of rest. I don't understand how we're going to do it. I mean, if we have games where we are trying to see off a performance, maybe we put in Thorsby or we put in Kutlu or something like that. But at the end of the day, like, we have these players in our squad not for just kind of superficial squad depth, but actually to contribute to the team. And one of the things that we make jokes all the time about having a number of central midfield players and maybe too many of them or whatever it might be. But I don't think any of us will forget that Strootman and Badel in particular are really old. Like, these are guys that, like, we can't expect to be fully healthy and injury-free if they're playing every single match of a 38-match day campaign on top of Coppa Italia matches as well. And so it's really concerning. I think we have to believe that somehow Gilardino is going to be able to get more out of both Kutlu and Thorsby. But without him being able to do that, it raises kind of an interesting concern that we've not had about Genoa in some time, which is, what are we thinking about with the central midfield position? How are we going to better serve that role and handle that specifically? So I don't know. For me, it was a pretty worrying sign. We didn't get the match done in quite the same way we would have expected. I will say, as you mentioned, the second half, we really saw a big change. Once we did bring on Badel and Frendrup, the match completely kind of turned on its head a little bit, if you want to call it that. But in the end, we really only mustered a single goal of that second half before we get into extra time anyway. And I have to say, I think this was Haps's moment. It was an absolutely wonderful strike from him that brought us level. I think it came already from a few spells of positive play prior to that, and that's to your point about the positive introductions of Badel and Frendrup. But fantastic strike. And to revisit De Winter for just a second, I agree with you. It was kind of a curious position to have him in more of like a wingback role. We've seen him as a fullback before. I actually thought about him when we signed him as more of a center back. But, we've seen also Gilardino play Vasquez in a similar way, who we thought as a center back, he's playing more of like a left back. And actually, in some cases, he's been sort of positionally flexing to be more of a wing back player. De Winter didn't really look very convincing as a wing back, just purely from a distribution side of things. But when you look actually at his defensive results from the match and what he was able to do with winning individual duels, recovering balls, all those types of things, phenomenal. So I think it may be somewhat surprising, maybe not. Very, very good defensively. We did not see the same kind of going forward in attack, but I actually kind of like that Gilardino tried this, because at least we're trying to get a sense of, okay, as we're putting players in certain positions, where can they best provide support for us? Where do we have opportunities for maybe more positional flexibility? I will say I was a little bit, I still kind of feel like we're not, I guess we didn't have Hefty in the lineup for this one, but in the end that you'd think that maybe you'd get a little bit more and maybe have other players that could play in that wingback position. But at the end of the day, De Winter did, I think he, in the end, like the full match analysis, you have to say he did a fairly serviceable job.
No, definitely. I think that he did a very well job, as I mentioned to you before. In the first half, he played more on the all-role defensive and going on the right side all the way to the attack, and he didn't do well also because of perhaps Nardi on their side from the Reggiana side, which was quite fluid and so on. But on the second half, where he played more on the defensive side, I think that's where he plays better. But to your point, the change of the match, where it all happened after Frendrup and Badel's entering, replacing Kutlu, which I think he was not in the best spot, role itself, and Thorsby, which are technically our two easier ones to replace, Strootman and Badel, are these the players really to concentrate for the next future? It doesn't look like. Now, Kutlu, I have a little bit of better hope, not necessarily, because based on what I've seen, it's almost starting to be like, okay, he's good at sometimes, but very bad at others. So it's like a lower quality itself. And then when Bani, we're almost fearing that he was not he had a bad injury and so on, but it was just like, he's okay, by the way, just like a cramps or something like that. And then Dragusic came in, and that almost put our defense back to square one. And Maturo, he's still 19, he's still doing some mistakes here and there, but he's still showing a lot of quality and so on.
I think at the end of the day, I don't look at our defense as being really concerning. Vujako had a mistake that led to the first goal, perhaps, but it was also a really good pass, and it wasn't that surprising he got undone. And I think that, like, as you mentioned, Maturo has already had some good matches in Serie A for us. Overall, net, you look at De Winter, Bani, Vujako, Maturo, Haps, and also the contributions that we ended up getting from Dragusin. I don't know. It's hard to feel too negative about the defense, but I'm with you that you raise more questions about the central midfield.
The good thing is the second half totally changed. And throughout, with 5 changes at hand, more and more of our first lineup came into the match, which I think it was a good also point for Gilardino to show, I'm saying, to the management of the quality that we have today with our bench in order to improve it, perhaps, some of it anyways, in general. Then Haps on the 53rd minute does such an amazing goal.
Maturo, Haps, Galdames for Puskás, and now Haps! Oh yes! Scintillating finish from Reggiana Haps. My oh my, did he connect with that? And Genoa back on level terms.
It starts all on the left, that it brings like different players at hand. And even Puskás was even involved in that. And then this goal from outside the box, essentially on the left side from Haps, was just like wonderful, to the point that this wonder goalie from Reggiana didn't even move. Because I have to say that, especially in the second half, the Reggiana goalie has showed some qualities that are remarkable.
Oh, their keeper did fantastic. I mean, I know we just said we weren't going to talk about Puskás, but he did. It maybe helped him that Puskás was our starting forward.
So I have to say, like in the first half, Puskás, like I really did not like him at all, and I would just like put him against the wall and shoot him. But in the second half, because the quality raising and so on, perhaps also at the better balls that were given to him, he even had like just soon after the goal itself, he had a brilliant occasion where it went to the crossbar. So you can't really give him too much fault to that. Okay, it didn't go in. But it was, it was quite going there. And it was almost like a copycat of a goal that he had done last year.
Back for Strootman. It's his cross. Puskás! So close. Rose really well to Georgi Puskás.
From the right to the left, in the box, in the small box, where he had a header and it just went to the crossbar rather than going into the goal. But the goalie was also on it. And I can't remember now if he briefly touched it or just
he got a hand to it. Yeah.
So, I mean, also unlucky from that perspective, from the Puskás perspective.
Yeah, I mean, you could say unlucky, I think. I think you could do better and be more clinical. I mean, at the end of the day, officially counted, if you're a believer in how these stats are counted, as 2 big chances missed, which you don't like to see when you're playing against a side in Serie B. I mean, I don't mean disrespect to Reggiana, but I think I don't think we can talk too much about unlucky when you're getting chances in a starting position and they're happening. And his expected goal ratio for this game was 0.5, which is quite high. He did not get a goal. He had an assist, which I think is worth saying. And I think in the end, he actually created a couple of big chances, which was interesting. He kind of had more of like layoff type movements and interactions that he was positive in that way. And so in net, we got an assist from him. He was dangerous. There's no question about that in his way that he was being involved. But you also really hope that if there's a match to get a guy like Puskás going, this is a type of match you would want him to get something from. He didn't really do that. So I don't know. Maybe there are some positives to take, but it is something I'd like to see a little bit more from him.
No, you're right. And just a few minutes after that, he even had another chance, clear ball against the goalie, and the goalie was just saved it, did not hold on to it. Badel almost got into like a possible penalty, which didn't happen. And then Galdames.
Dragushin, his ball back, lovely take from Maturo, Puskás, and Bade, and now Galdames. Fabulous goalkeeping from Saturnino.
I'm sorry, Galdames, in my opinion, is the anti-MVP, meaning he was perhaps a clear example of a player that really, let's keep in the locker room, because apparently he is such a great player with respect to morale, but he's just not quality for Serie A.
I mean, it's interesting. For some reason, I thought he was like 4 years older than he actually is. He's only 26. I know we only signed him in 21, but it feels, maybe he's just the guy. He kind of looks like that too. He looks like he's a little bit older or something. But I mean, I think it's a not. I can't knock you for thinking that about him, because at the end of the day, again, these are times when however you want to think about how our lineup was for this match, these are moments for players to make their own mark and have their own impact. And there are different reasons for why it's difficult to do that coming in cold. And particularly for him, I think I can sympathize actually a little bit more with his not being as sharp because he's hardly been used at all for us, at least this season. I know we got him back from Cremonese and everything else, but it's unfortunate because these are times where you want to see more of that confidence, and we're obviously not quite there. I think the plus side for him also still is we have Retegui and Macias who are out. So I don't think this is the last we're going to see of Galdames nor of Puskás. And this will be for sure a talking point we're going to have for upcoming matches. But in the end, we talked about Haps's goal. I thought was absolutely fantastic and brilliant. We still only manage, and to your point, I think we have to give Reggiana's keeper and overall their plan a lot of credit because Reggiana really did themselves a good account in this match. But with how Coppa Italia is set up, we go to extra time. We're not doing another fixture, as with many of the modern cup ties these days. In extra time, we see the breakthrough. We see Gudmundsson once again coming to our aid, helping save us, and we end up advancing 2-1 against Reggiana.
Strootman for Bade. Through it goes for Gudmundsson. There it is. He got the only goal against Salernitana on Friday, and Gudmundsson scores at the same end. And this time, it is the goal which gives Genoa the lead.
I think for me, the summary of this match wasn't pretty. It was not at all our best performance. We would have probably expected a little bit more, but at the end of the day, we got the result. I think there's just enough, even from the guys we've kind of been shading on. I mean, maybe less so for Torsby and for Kutlu because they were unfortunately taken out before we really saw any positive opportunities at all from Genoa in the match. But when you look across the board with every other player that had seen some minutes, they all did just enough, I think, for us to get the result out of this match. I would have liked to see it a lot more comfortable than it was, but a win is a win, and we're on to the next round.
We're probably going to be missing, as you mentioned, too, Retegui for quite a bit. I'm expecting that he might be coming back after the international break, so we're not going to see him against Cagliari, and we're not going to see him against Verona. That means that we're going to have to count on Puskás and or Ekuban. We're going to have to hope that they are going to be wish for their best, and also that they don't get injured, because that can be also different issue altogether as well. You know, the next match against Cagliari is going to be quite a difficult one. It's going to be an away match. We're going to have to fly all the way to Sardinia. They have also issues themselves with some injuries. Some players have been, especially on the defense side, are having some issues, and only some benchers are going to be having to play. But, you know, it's not an impossible match. It's face-to-face. They're coming from a great victory, but at the same time, we're also without a take. So that's our issue, is in the attack, and that's the same thing that we had against Reggiana. But with Reggiana, we had the opportunity, as you mentioned, that I had foreseen that there was a possibility of the TV to come in, and he did an amazing cross. Like that kick that he had, if you recall, against Salernitana, was just like something unbelievable. So he stops the ball with the right, turns with the back towards the goal, turns around, kicks it with his left. That's where he kind of got injured again. It was just like the pure class, pure breed of the striker that we've always been wanting since probably Piątek.
Yeah, I think Piątek is probably the most. I mean, if you want to be charitable to this Kamaka, maybe you could say him, but I think really like Piątek is the last time we had a really prolific like number nine. I want to take a quick pause on that though, and I do want to talk about what's coming up in Coppa Italia, since we won't be talking about this for a while. As we all know, and as our not friend, but I'll call him friend on this podcast, Jose Mourinho has pointed out before, maybe the worst cup competition in all of Europe. Format-wise, what we're looking at next, though, I think is kind of interesting. So we managed, of course, to pass Reggiana, and now we enter the gauntlet phase, where we have to go through all of the top 6 sides in Italy, most likely, in order to win anything. Our next match, the ties have been out after all the matches have been complete. December 6th, we'll be playing Lazio. So I think this will be a really interesting one, given how our first match had turned out. It's one where we are not likely, unfortunately, to your point, to have Retegui back, possibly Macias, but it will be one where we'll be going up against Lazio again after having a good result against them earlier in the season. If we do happen, I won't put too much on beyond this, but I do want to kind of overview what the next phase would be. So we are in a bracket. We play Lazio December 6th. There are a handful of matches that are happening in December. Ours is one of them. There are a few more. Cagliari are playing Milan December 6th. Napoli and Frosinone are going against each other. Juve and Salernitana, which will be interesting for a couple of reasons, which I think you know what I'm alluding to. Atalanta and Sassuolo, and Fiorentina Parma. So actually like kind of a fun match day, I guess you could say, on December 6th, if we can actually manage to watch the damn games. But the winner of Lazio Genoa will play the winner of Roma Cremonese, actually. That match won't happen until January 13th. And the follow-up match of the two winners there between the two teams will be January 17th. So really interesting. The other kind of part of the bracket that our group would go against next is the Juve, Salernitana, Napoli, Frosinone bracket. So whoever kind of advances from our group, which basically you would think if we do get a result, we'll also have to get a result again from Roma, which will be, pretty big asks to get. And then more than likely, if all things go well, we have either Napoli or Juve waiting for us after that. So did want to just preview what it would look like. I think thus far, for us, for our expectations, this is about what success looks like in Coppa Italia. We've made it pretty far. We hope we do a good account of ourselves against Lazio. And we've got enough of a result. I'm really curious to think about how we end up kind of playing these matches in the next several match weeks. The Lazio match will be a big one, of course, mainly because we'll be missing our star striker. So how we approach that will be...
Because if you think about it, that's after the national break.
Yes, but if you are with me on this, we were just doing the same thing with Salernitana. We thought, well, maybe it's a little bit too early. We play him, he gets hurt.
Exactly.
Are we really going to put him in a cut match and then have to play Roma and Juve and Inter back to back to back? Is that worth him being out until March?
Ultimately, we have to play it by ear with respect to the how the player is feeling and what's happening wrong. You're right, absolutely right. But at the same time, it has to be waited until what happens to the player itself, how he feels, and so on. I guess that's all I can add to that, and so on. But I guess before we go to the wrap, I guess, of this match let's talk about predictions.
Yeah, again, this is a really, really big match for us, I think. Maybe not everyone would be thinking the same way, but us going up against Cagliari in Serie A, this is a big chance for a really positive result. Again, I don't think we can take all that much from Cagliari. I know they're sitting at 19. For us, this is really critical. You look at what we'll have. So just a kind of a reminder, we will not have Mattia Bani still because of suspension. So he was able to participate in the Coppa Italia, different competition. So we will not have him back, which is a little bit of a concern. Talked about Retegui, Macias, and Jagiello. None of those players are expected to show up. I think there's maybe a very minor chance for Macias, but I would not put any money on that at all.
He might be on the bench, but I don't think so.
Yeah, seems unlikely. So we've got some key players that we're missing. I think this one, obviously, we've squared up against Cagliari a decent bit, having, of course, been with them in Serie A and gone down with them to Serie B this past season. I don't know. It will be a really interesting one for sure. I think that we are playing at Cagliari, as you mentioned before. So you've got kind of the away factor there, and I know they're kind of away ground, everything with that, traveling to Sardinia, all the other things. Maybe that has some sort of impact in the match. My prediction of how we go about and how we approach this one, I think that you might see, barring Retegui, and I can't remember if Bani had played in this last match, but I think we might have a similar approach to how we kind of line up against Salernitana. I do think that, are we going to have Martinez back for this one? I can't remember. I think he'll be back from suspension, right? That'll be kind of an interesting decision. I would expect him probably to be behind the goal. I'm with you. He's been borderline our top player these last few matches. I think seeing how he's performed, there have been at least one match where he was like the man of the match for us. And I kind of don't love to see him lose his position all of a sudden now with Martinez coming back, but Martinez has kind of been Martinez for us. He's been a really big part of our team. So I do expect that will be the case. In terms of how we're going to kind of get something out of this one and how I think the match will go, do not anticipate this being a cakewalk. I think this is, we're going up against again, whether or not you look at them in the table and what this has happened, we're going against a Ranieri run club, a team that are pretty savvy as it relates to kind of getting results. And I think that overall, Fabry, I'm not exactly sure how they've kind of played and what they've done is completely indicative of where they are. So I think that like we now have, kind of a big ask on our hands to get something out of this. They're a team that, remember, they beat Frosinone. They drew with Salernitana, who we played. They didn't have the best accounting against Roma. They were able to get past Udinese. So, and that was in the Coppa Italia. So you've got a team that are capable. I don't think you can look at them and say this is anything. And I expect this to be kind of a very difficult match. I've been predicting this for most of the season, and I think it will carry through. I don't think this is going to be a match with a lot of chances. I'm not sure this is going to be a classic in any sense of the imagination. I kind of like us to get a goal from a set piece in this one. So I think Genoa 1-0 is what I would predict. I like Dragushin as our goal scorer from a well-executed set piece.
On my side, I can't go too far from what you said with respect to the results. I do think that we have a chance, an opportunity actually to consolidate our position and perhaps even make it a little bit stronger with a win. The issues in my point of view are essentially what the formation will be.
Yes.
And necessary also the benches that might come in, because Ranieri is Ranieri. At the same time, we don't have Bani, so who is it going to be for that? Not is he going to be in a good day or not? And mostly at the front. In the midfield, I think we've recuperated both players. Whether they have all the 90 minutes or not, that's a different story. And I think Gilardino will have to manage around that. But the issue is at front, and what I do want to see is either whether that is Ekuban or whether that is Puskas, I want them to have that goal and give them more that security and or certainty and or strength in order to bring back that confidence, even though they are the benches, even though we know they're not that good, or at least at the level that we would like them to be. And perhaps just make them grow, even though Ekuban is at his last year here with us. Puskás, we just bought him back from the team from the UK at a very cheap price, but was that like more so just to display him and sell him off at a better price? Not likely with this rendering that he's been showing. But ultimately, I think that we have the opportunity and the chance to win with Cagliari ultimately.
I will say, I think I mentioned before, I think we'll look kind of like we looked against Salernitana. I can give you one more and tell you exactly what I think we'll look like. I do think that's where pretty much what we're going to be. I think we'll be in the 3-5-2, if you want to call it the 3-5-1-1. So again, we talked about it a bit. Martinez is our keeper. We talked about Dragushin as being one of those three guys in defense. I think one of the other two will be Vasquez. The question for the third is kind of interesting because you pretty much are going between Voyako or maybe De Winter in that position. I kind of think it will be Voyako. De Winter, I do like where he is there. I think he could be solid, but it's really important from a back three that you've got three players that are able to communicate and understand what to do in those different situations. And I would be more hesitant to see De Winter there because we've been playing him more out wide lately, even though I mentioned before, I kind of saw him initially as more of a center back. So I think we actually might see Voyako getting his first Serie A start, which would be fantastic and something we all would really be looking for and rooting for. The midfield five I see is pretty much unchanged from what we played against Salernitana. Erin Martin as our fullback on the left side, Malinowski, the more kind of maybe attack-minded midfielder, Badel and Frendrup. You can make an argument that Malinowski comes out and you have Strootman in that same position. I'm kind of interested to see how we take this match. As much as I think it's going to be a grudge match, I don't think Gilardino will be playing it from a negative perspective, which is why I kind of think Malinowski will get an opportunity there. By the way, we didn't really talk about it, but he also had a role in that game-winning goal for us in the Coppa Italia. That's, first of all, great to see because we've not always seen so much from him on the contribution side of things.
And Salernitana as well.
Yes, exactly. So I think there could be a really interesting thing with him coming in. So you see Malinowski, Badel, Frendrup, and I would expect also Sabelli to be the player that gets the nod on the right. And from our 2 or 1-1, however you might say it, obviously Gudmundsson. Question is, who's the other one? I think it will be Puskás for a simple reason, actually. I think Puskás is a player who is a known quantity. He has a type of play. If we need to get a game changed, if we need to change a match, I would feel better about putting Ekuban on in 65 minutes, 70 minutes than I would Puskás, because I think Puskás has a certain type of play. He does things differently. He interfaces differently. Ekuban, I prefer as a player. If you're asking me which player would you like to keep, I'd rather keep Ekuban than Puskás. But I think that the value of Puskás coming on in the latter third of the match is greatly diminished versus Ekuban, purely because I think Ekuban has more of an ability to shine and get something. As much as I said this could be holding him back performance-wise, I think that might be a decision to say, let's keep him on the bench. Let's have him be the quote-unquote super sub, and hopefully we do get a super sub type of result from him. But I think we're going to be a 3-5-2. Just knowing that this is kind of Gilardino's preferred, and we also know, of course, that we've seen this many times from Genoa this season, it's not exactly a 3-5-2. It really rotates a lot. You see a lot of, the kind of opposite defender come back and form a back four when we're out of possession. You see sometimes the midfielder come back into defense and the forwards come back into the midfield. So you see lots of different kind of rotational elements, and why I think we'll be doing this is because this formation seems to lend itself most to the fluid style that Gilardino likes to employ with this squad. But we'll see. We've definitely had already a pretty decent mix of formations we've tried out this season.
Well, ultimately, at the end, it also makes the difference between Puskás being the striker versus Ekuban. I think is more the winger, but ultimately, as you said,
right,
we just have to wish on both of them. Ultimately, maybe both of them together work better. I don't know. Yeah. Having said that, we are at a wrap. This was an intense week of Genoa. Also, next one coming up. So we played on Friday, then we played on Wednesday, and now we're playing on Sunday against Cagliari at Cagliari. And definitely looking forward to the next match is also coming up, which will be Verona on Friday once again. Having said that, we are on all social media, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Please drop us a like, comments, and write to us directly. But never forget, always and forever, Forza Genoa.
You've listened to La Lanterna, a spotlight on Italian football, a podcast powered by Genoani Si Resta. Thank you for listening and see you next week.